Westworld is a fantasy island. It's a fantasy land, and I don't recommend you even watch it on HBO. That's why I'm going to do such a detailed explanation today, because there's so much porn in it, like sex porn, violence porn, which is designed to callous the mind and heart. So I have the ability to fast forward through stuff. A lot of people don't, and I suffer so you don't have to. Wait, that becomes very ironic to what I'm talking about today. So let me just break down the truth in it. I mean, the show is inherently, at its core, evil, but it's really, really well done and has a lot of truth in it and a lot of revelations to what's happening in the world today. So Westworld is a place where there are, and Howdy Mikulski also has done a breakdown of Westworld. He actually inspired me to do this because I'm going to go into season 3, which he didn't go into, which is so important to understanding the whole idea of Westworld. So there are 3 types of entities in this show. There are the hosts, the guests, and the people who work at the Westworld facility. These 2 here, is that Teddy, are hosts. And the term host means like to welcome, but it also means the body that the parasite eats from. So basically what this is let me give you, here is the people who work at Westworld, obviously looking at a flat earth map, which they always do. They're always putting it in your face. And they're managing this amusement park. Think of Westworld as an amusement park. And so extremely rich people go to Westworld to act out their fantasies. Whether it's very low vibrational debauch fantasies where they just kill and bang everything they want with no repercussions and no one watching, which is what they think. How would a man act when no one is watching? It's what is the appeal of atheism. It is the appeal of a lot of these isms to release yourself of the stress that your actions are being accounted for. The irony of the entire series of Westworld is it's extremely theological. It all presumes a creator. All of it, it's profoundly, like the arguments for God and our creator is in the entire thing, and I believe it's completely unintentional of what the creators originally wanted of the show. We'll talk more about that. So Westworld, so these extremely wealthy guests get to come to this world, and all these quote-unquote robots that represent us, we actually represent both depending on what layer of the fractal you're looking at. But so the robots that represent us, they get to delight in. And the quote that keeps coming throughout the entire show, I've written down a lot of notes and quotes. These violent delights have violent ends. That's from Romeo and Juliet. And it's very true that when you delight in the violent, when you delight in the debauched, your end is very debauched. And these violent delights have violent ends. And I'm by the way, I'm going to be saying, spoiler alert, I think you're no, I'm not going to make any claims. I'm just checking in to make sure you guys can see this. What's up, BB? Happy Tuesday, you as well. This breakdown will be gravy. Yeah, it will. All right, I'll stay focused. These violent delights have violent ends. Yeah. So the metaphors are all over the place, and it's fractal. So you could make, all right, I'm going to stay focused. So these guests pay to come and do whatever they want with these characters. These characters are designed by writers, a writing team. And each character has what's called a cornerstone for the story of their loop. As Westworld opens, you have this character of Teddy, who's this cowboy. He comes in on a train, he gets off the train, he bumps into a guy, he loses his hat. He has the same day every day. It's like Groundhog's Day, like Bill Murray's Groundhog's Day. This main character, Dolores, on the left here, has the same day every day. She's a rancher's daughter. She's very innocent. She looks at the splendor of the world. She sees the beauty. She's always painting in fields, and she can be ravaged, raped, murdered. Anything that the guests want, they can do to her. And then they just bring her into the underworld, which is where the employees of Westworld are. and they fix her. Everything good? Okay, cool. And they send her back up to do it all over again. It's an unending loop for the pleasure of the guest. And the guest gets to do anything they want there because they feel it's the place where no one is watching. As you find out, I forgot to tell you, lots of spoilers. I'm going to present this as if I don't care if you ever see it. Thank you. By season 3, you realize that the data they've collected in the camp is the entire business model of the camp. So what these people are doing to these robots is data collection. And it's no different than what the internet does right now. And so when you think you're not being watched is when you're being watched the most. And that data of your deepest desires, the thing you hide in the outside world, is the most valuable of all the data. The most valuable data, a lot of it in the internet right now, is pornography. Your deepest, weird, creepy fantasies that you think no one's watching you when you're clicking on your computer or your phone is all being logged. And there's entities that understand what phone did it, who that person is, what their insurance is, what their past is, what they do for a living, where they live, blah, blah, blah. Click, 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 click. All right. So Westworld is a place where these people come, and and so the good versus evil, so this character is a quote-unquote human. I say quote-unquote because you realize that it's all a fractal metaphor, that the robots are the humans are the robots, depending on which world they live in. Because by the end of season 1, the robots are now escaping this world into the quote-unquote real world, which you realize is a lot more similar to the Westworld world than you would have imagined. That people are operating on a loop based on their data and their cornerstone story. So this guy comes, and so he comes with this other guy's friend. And when you come into Westworld, you're given an opportunity of having a black hat or a white hat. And so the white hats are on a heroic journey. Like, they're going to save the damsel, they're going to kill the bad guy. That's their fantasy. The black hat is the bad guy. They want to go, and there's a scene where they're coming into Westworld, and some guys are bragging. It was like, man, the best time I ever had here is I just went full evil. Where they just go in with the black hat, kill everything, rape everything, and then they leave, and no one cares, right? But it's all being recorded. Later you find out the recording device is in the hat. It's recording their brain frequencies as they're doing the acts that they don't think anyone can see, right? And that's a metaphor for, God's book of life, the Akashic record, whatever you want to call it, that your actions while you're in Earth, while you're here, is being recorded. And I've always believed that. You always can tell someone's watching. You can just feel it. And so the cornerstone of each, like, the writer is played by Hannibal Lecter here, and so he's the creator. So he's representing the God character, the omnipotent character, the one that just keeps appearing in scenes, and he's the writer of their scripts. And right now in your life, you have a script. When you wake up, you realize you can write your own script within God's parameters. I'll get to all that. I'll get to all the metaphysics of the show. But the cornerstone is the event that shaped your life the most. Every character as a writer, like as a former Hollywood writer, I actually know a lot about these concepts, about how to write a script. Like when you're watching a movie and the character really jumps out at you and you feel like it's really real, it's because the writer has established who the character is. Even if the character has 3 lines of dialogue, they've done something called character work. And the writer does the same thing. Like, why is this person motivated? And this woman, who later becomes a prostitute in another rewrite, she was motivated by the kidnapping and murder of her and her daughter by a bunch of Indians. And then the man in black, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is that's the motivator for this woman. And so for this woman, it is being a good daughter to her dad, viewing the splendor of this world, this relationship she has with this other guy, Teddy, who keeps coming in, getting killed, leaving, coming, but they have no memory. Their memory keeps getting wiped, but the memories start coming back. And throughout season 1, these robots are starting to awaken to where they really live. And every time they're killed or raped or disfigured by one of these parasitic entities, they get a diagnostic. And one of the main questions they ask these robots is, have you ever questioned the nature of your reality? And they always say no. Because if they say yes, it's a problem. And we obviously live in a situation like Westworld right now. It's not, I'll explain to you why this show has been made, and they're not as good at it as what they're trying to pretend they are. Why they give so much truth in this show, because it makes people say, oh, it's just like reality. They're telling you what it is. No, they're not capable of keeping you in the loop anywhere near what they want. So that's the Luciferian agenda of this show. I can break down how this show brainwashes and how it tries to get you to root for robots and root for different entities as it brings in a normalization of a world that does not exist. So I'm just going to break down season 1 a little bit more, and then we'll get into the season 3. Season 2 is a wash, but season 3 is when things really spice up. And so White Hat, Black Hat. So this guy on the right wants to be the good guy, and he falls in love with Dolores, the robot, and thinks he's in love. And then when he sees her the next day on a loop, he gets heartbroken. He's very Gamma. I don't know if the writers realize that, but it's the same character as this. The timelines are warped throughout the first season, and this man in black, the real bad man, is shooting everyone. He's all in black. He's obsessed on a mission to figure out who he really is, because there's a game and a script that he's never seen. He is the guy in the white hat grown up. He ends up buying the entire structure of Westworld. He's like a multi-billionaire, but he's obsessed. He's here all the time. He ignores his wife and daughter, who end up both dying. And he's just obsessed. He's a Gamma. He's like, how could you break my heart? It's like a robot, right? So this is all happening. And so this character is on a mission to find the center of Westworld. And this map is on the inside of all these guys' scalps, and it's like in the sand, and it's almost like the show Lost. It's like hinted everywhere, and it's a maze to get to the center. And I kind of noticed that maze looks a lot like the Eye of Horus. There's obviously a lot of occult symbolism, and not that that's super interesting stuff, but it's there. Like in season 3, the main sentient supercomputer is named Solomon, like the king given the knowledge, right? All right, so anyway, so this guy's on a mission to get to the center of Westworld. And he realizes that it's not Bernard, another character, realizes that it's not a pyramid. Like, to achieve consciousness, it's not going up, it's going in. And so this maze wasn't made for the man in black, the human being, the guest. It was made for the hosts. The creator of this entire thing, this guy, set up a maze, set up a process where the robots could find illumination. This show is clearly made by satanic type people, but it's really well done. And as long as you keep that in mind and you don't watch the porn in it, you do kind of understand a better way of how they view the world. And to protect the flock, it's very good to understand the wolf, So this guy has set up a maze for the robots to achieve illumination and to achieve consciousness, even though he says he doesn't believe in consciousness, which I didn't quite understand. And so this Gamma guy is always looking for the maze, and this guy tells him it's not for you. And so that is pretty much the first season. And I wrote a bunch of quotes. I was going to read these. Oh yeah, and once the robots wake up, the reason that there's such an emphasis on the robots not waking up to the situation of their life is because they so outnumber the parasites, the guests. And the guests have been exploiting them and using them. It's so applicable to a lot of people's situation. But you can also say that the guest and host relationship, like as an American, you can look at what the American fiat currency is doing to the rest of the world, how we as Americans are exploiting, Chinese child labor, resources in Africa, the colonizing empire model. We would be the guest and they would be the host. You understand? You could even make an argument. It's not a biblical argument because we do have dominion over the animals, but you can make an argument that the animals are the exploited guest and we are the host. Or no, the exploited host and we're the guest, and every day we take their milk and we are amused by them and all that, and then they look to break free, and some of them never want to break free because they like their setup and others do, right? It's very interesting. And so when the hosts finally wake up and exit this world to the quote-unquote real world, things get very interesting because you realize the real world ain't so real. All right, let's go through some of these quotes. I used to think this place was all about pandering to your baser instincts. Now I understand. It doesn't cater to your lowest self. It reveals your deepest self. It shows you who you really are. The idea that no one is watching is constant in this. And by season 3, you realize that not only are they watching, the main output of this place is data from what you do when you think no one's watching. It's exactly a one-to-one comparison with the internet. That all your Google searches, especially porn, and especially covetous searches, like looking for like what you desire, what you want, like what material you want and who you want to fuck and who you want to watch, like all that stuff. And then one thing that I think changed the game in our existence and civilization was the ability of compiling data from the internet to show the real veneer of a lot of people. And Westworld and the data collection of the first 20 years of the internet kind of showed a small group of people what was really going out there. Like, what are the porn search terms in the Deep South in the Bible Belt? When I was growing up, the Deep South was seen as all Christian. It was all Bible thumpers. Everybody was Christian, Christian, Christian. Imagine being an executive at Google, and imagine being an executive at these porn companies, and you're like, we just transmitted like 1 million terabytes of hardcore gangbang porn to Alabama. And then you start looking at who's watching it, and you're like, whoa. And then you can start reconstructing the world. You start the trans movement, LGBT, because you know that they'll go along with it. Because once you see what's behind the curtain, you own the person. If it's not what's in front of the curtain. Like I take a lot of, consciousness isn't a journey upward, but a journey inward. Not a pyramid, but a maze. That's so biblical. See, this is why I think the creators of this are Luciferian and not so much satanic. Like, satanic is more low vibrational, base, stuff. Lucifer knows full well God exists, but Lucifer rebelled against God and created a victim narrative for himself. And so this entire series is from the point of view of Lucifer, not Satan. They pretend God doesn't exist, but yet they keep describing him. The creator, the fractal, all of these corner stories, the writer of your life. And in each level, the creator gets killed, and by their own design. Like the Hannibal Lecter guy, his name's Ford, he gets killed by his own creation, but he wants to. He wrote that in so that they could be free. I think the Luciferians are all, if you watch don't watch it, but if you even understand the concept of the Lil Nas X video where he does a gay lap dance on Satan's lap and then takes his horns, that's the snake eating itself loop. Talk about loops. No one's in more of a loop than Luciferians or Satanists. I mean, they are in a loop, and there's knowledge there, and they're not just all bad. There's something wrong with their logic, and it's nakedly wrong, and it comes from envy, wrath, all that stuff, in my opinion. But they do seem to have a lot of knowledge of, these things, but their perspective is from what I deem the bad guys. And then you realize that the very rebellion itself is written into the script by the creator. Everything under the sun, like everything that happens is under the script of God. Like God allowed the rebellion, because through pain and rebellion is how you split the wheat from the chaff, the goats from the sheep. Like you need to have a culminating incident. You need to have a friction in order for the believer to actually elevate spiritually, go more inward, have a higher frequency, closer relationship to God. That's what I believe, and I don't know for sure, obviously, but I believe that's why God allows the rebellion, because he doesn't have to. The creator, Westworld is such a theological show. It's just from the point of view of the rebellion. It's like God can just create storylines for everybody to live in perfect sync and peace and happiness forever, but without free will, without the ability to question the nature of your reality, you can't show real love. All right, humanity's biggest threat, this is from season 3. So humanity's biggest threat has always been itself. And that's from Sirach, the richest man in the world who owns Solomon, who can predict everything, blah, 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 blah. And that's the excuse of the narcissist. That you have to be controlled because your biggest threat to you is yourself. It's the same Britney Spears argument. It's the same argument for the American citizen not being in control of their own finances. You're going to go right back to World War I, World War II, 1933, 1871. You guys are just going to squabble and kill each other anyway, so we're going to control your finances. American citizens the citizens of the world are under the control. It's the same relationship with Britney Spears and her dad. We're given an allowance. We're allowed to do certain things, but the excuse of the narcissist is typically what they do is they create the very problems that they then claim is an excuse for why they have to control you. This is a powerful, powerful line from Maeve, the prostitute whose cornerstone story was her child being killed. It said, "All my life I've prided myself on being a survivor, but surviving is just another loop." Right? That's not pure free will. If your only motivation, there's this powerful scene in Westworld where Maeve, one of the main characters, is rebelling, in full rebellion against the Westworld staff, the controllers of Westworld. And there's a diagnostic team around her checking her dialogue, like what she's supposed to say. And she's like, "We have to destroy this place. We have to get out. And she's in full rebellion. Like, I know I'm a robot. And the guy holds up the tablet, and it's saying everything she's saying. Like, she's still in a script. That rebellion itself is still a script. Like, whenever you're going outward, like that's why when you look at January 6th or a lot of these other things, or the BLM movement or any of that, they're still being scripted. And you're like, no, we have to take the power back. We have to go break this window. It's like, no, you're currently operating in the script written by your master as the rebellion. Right? Isn't that interesting? All right, so, and this was said by the quote-unquote creator, "Your mind is a walled garden. Even death cannot touch the flowers blooming there." Walled garden is a description of Eden. So much of this, that's why I know it's Luciferian, not satanic. It's not the absence of God, it's the rebellion of God, is the writers of this. It's people that want to make their own God. And that is a real problem, and we're going to talk about Solomon here, and then also It from A Wrinkle in Time. It's the same thing and how to resist it. All right, so we humans, see, some of this are written by people that actually don't understand nature. And I appreciated Howdy Mikulski addressing this point in his Westworld breakdown, that nature is extremely brutal. So Robert Ford, the creator, says, "We humans are alone in this world for a reason. We murdered and butchered anything that challenged our primacy." Everything in nature murders and butchers everything that challenges primacy. Nature is only beautiful. It's always beautiful in a sense, but nature is the most beautiful from a distance. The closer you look, you see a slaughterhouse. Whether it's worms and birds and, fighting over a piece of territory, or like when one animal takes over a pride and murders all the babies of the previous male, and it's brutal. Even on a bacterial level, it's kill or be killed. And humans just won. You know, I mean, there's an argument, there's some hilarious arguments that we're actually slaves to wheat or cats. Like, if you think about it, it's like there's way more wheat than humans, and we like suffer to grow it. You know, it's like, it's really interesting to think who really is the apex, or like certain forms of bacteria or certain things that can, you know, but it's just interesting. You know, you could make a claim that if you look at the welfare distribution of taxation in America, who's really the slave? You know, the guy's working really hard to make a tax base so that other people can get the money. So in that situation, in feudal systems, who really is the feudal lord and who would be the serf? Very interesting stuff. Anyway, next quote. What humans describe as sane is a narrow range of behavior. Most states of consciousness are insane. Bernard Lowe, season 2, episode 8. Yeah. It's like when you see the range of potential in human behavior, the amount that's considered sane is like visible light spectrum compared to all light. It's this big. You know, just not putting on your pants, just talking like this all the time, right? Just doing this with your eyes. Hey, how you doing? Everything cool? Like little tiny things, an almost infinite amount of things would be deemed as insane. That's why these control structures, these loops, are so important to giant systems, because think about how many options you actually have as a human being. Like what you could actually do at any minute of any day. Like, I could just smash this over my head and start praying to it as a god, and that, you know, it's like there's infinite amount of, that's why I don't think AI will ever actually work. That's why I think this whole thing's a wet dream, and I'll get to that. But because, you know, it has no consciousness. It can be anything. All right, so anyway, another quote by Dolores: to grow, we all need to suffer. And I do think that's true. The narcissist will then say, because that's true, I get to torture you to make you grow. It's very important, especially in these times, that people can identify the difference between a true thing and then a distortion of that true thing for control. To grow, we do need to suffer, and that suffering is already written into our script of life. Everything we know, everyone we know and love will all die. We will get old. We will have pain. We will be confused. We will have droughts and fires and floods. Like, our script is already written for suffering and growth. We do not need narcissistic human beings to do this to us. And in fact, what they do in that realm, almost always, without any doubt that I've seen in my life, always ends to their own destruction. Violent delights have violent ends. And the people that delight in the narcissistic control of you always, always have horrible ends. From what I've seen in my life. Everything in the world is magic except to the magician. I love that quote. And so when they try to get you under their spell for their own violent delights, their own sadism, 9 young female employees of a New York court office all opposed the C-19V because they want children. They organized and told their supervisor they will walk out on the job if it's mandated. The office cannot run without them. Result, the office is now not mandating it. You always have a choice. And people want to act like someone is making them do it. Oh, we don't have free will. That's what season 3 is all about, and we'll get to that. But it's an excuse. It's saying, oh, I had to. I had to. You know, I got horny. I mean, what was I supposed to do? This girl really wanted me. I was just so horny and alone, and me and my wife just got in an argument, and she had this power over me. I had to take the loan. What else am I going to do? You know, it's like, I had to take the, no, you don't. You don't. The amount of possibilities you have in your life is unlimited. And those very people that are trying to make you think that you're mandated to do something in this world are also on a loop. And when you disrupt the loop, or when you're an outlier, which gets to season 3, they don't even know what to do. Some of them, like in this show, you'll see them just start, twitching and glitching because they don't. That's why, Paul from Pockets talks about all these people and the media and all this glitching out. Because they're so programmed as robots. They're not actual robots. They're not actual, like clones or any of this stuff. I mean, I would bet any amount of money. Does cloning exist? Maybe it exists on some level. You're not seeing people swapped out. That isn't how it works. Maybe with lookalikes, I don't know. But they're human beings, but they're so programmed and put on loops that they literally don't know what to do when the loop is broken. All right. I understand now this world doesn't belong to them. It belongs to us. Dolores Abernathy, season 1, episode 10. That's when nationalism typically comes back to an area. This is all cycles of governance, economics, history, all of it. It's like, so you have a global empire control. Nothing you're seeing now is new. And then the locals start having this epiphany that their world actually belongs to them and not the people who come and have violent delights. And then that's the rise of tribalism, nationalism. That's why the group controlling the park or our world are so terrified of tribalism, nationalism, identity politics. All politics is identity politics. When someone says, oh, identity politics is so bad, it's like, well, do you identify as an American? Yeah, obviously, these are all American senators. It's like, not so fast. That's identity politics, right? You understand. And it's not just good, bad, this, that. It just is a cycle. All right, another quote by Dolores. It's tribal. They use plumage to identify themselves, which makes them easily fooled. That's in season 3 when she's going into a party with all the billionaires. And they just dress like a billionaire and no one questions it, because when you analyze human beings, which I do for a living as a comedian, you understand how silly so much of it is. The longer I work here, the more I think I understand the hosts. It's the human beings that confuse me. You see this a lot. This is why globalism, empire, it always requires a rotation of labor. Guantanamo Bay had some very interesting situations that would happen. They would take these Muslims and put them in Guantanamo Bay, and one of the guards became a Muslim because he was there too long, and he started relating to the Muslim more than he related to his supervisors. And he saw them praying, he saw their gratitude, and slowly but surely, several guards at Guantanamo Bay started becoming Muslims because these metaphors are fractal. So it's like when you're around these robots all the time and you start seeing that they're more human than your bosses, that's a problem for your bosses. And you see that a lot. That's why society has to be so broken up into classes and districts and, thought bubbles and silos of thought, like, oh, these people go to Twitter, these people go to Gab. And then within that, there's little groups and little groups, because the more you mix, the more you see it's really, like, the differences aren't that crazy. You start relating. You start being like, oh, I see what you mean. Like, there's liberals that live here that I relate to more than a lot of the macro conservatives like Charlie Kirk, because a lot of them became liberal back when the right wing was pushing Catholicism on them, or NGO food. A lot of these farmers were like, the main push of Monsanto came from people like Ben Shapiro. It was like, well, we have to stop global food shortages, and the only way to do it is to, And so they're like, no. And the right wing was pushing circumcision, was trying to ban breastfeeding. Like a lot of rural people identify as liberal, and now they're being hijacked in a different way because the script's flipped, and now that the quote-unquote liberal is more tyrannical, you now see people for what they really are again. Every time you do a flip, you get to see clearly. It's an apocalypse. Apocalypse simply means to see clearly. And so, like, the truth being revealed. And so, anyway, let's get to season 3. So season 3, Dolores leaves Westworld and gets to the real world, quote-unquote real world, and you find out that the real world is being governed by an AI machine called Solomon, and it was developed by 2 French brothers, and it collects all your data. So there's a scene that I'm going to show you real quick here that Jim Bob actually sent me. Thank you, Jim Bob. This is what they're pushing here.
Machine they call Kobo. The founders of this machine fed everyone's raw data long before there were privacy laws. Every purchase, job search, doctor visit, romantic choice, call, text, every aspect of your lives. Recorded, logged. In order to create a mirror world of this world. Why? To make a composite of you. Everyone. So it tells them who I am. It's not about who you are, Caleb. It's about who they'll let you become.
Okay, so I always liked Aaron Paul in the first 3 seasons of Breaking Bad, and now he has like the Batman disease. He talks like this. Why? I'll take 2 slices of pizza, and I want some toppings. Like they always talk like this now. But anyway, see, this is when the propaganda comes in. This is why they put out shows like this. Because what they're describing is what they want. Now, what they want and what they have are 2 very different things. Oh, how dare you? There's no way that exists in nature. This is called Epcot Center in Disney World. Yeah, no, they try this stuff all the time. Anyway, so what the futuristic fantasy is that the data of your entire life is logged, and then they can predict your future outcomes. So everything you hit like on, every transaction, every porn search, your insurance history. There's whole companies that are made that combine insurance data and this data and that. They're obsessed with data. But it's another sacred cow. If you can see through the matrix truly, you understand what is going on. Okay, so like they have this Aaron Paul character, and he's a construction worker, and he has his robot buddy and all this, because they give you this truth, and you're rooting against the bad guy, quote unquote, who has Solomon, because that allows your subconscious to let in the story. The hero's journey, the deep, divine stories of truth that are in our code, given to us by God, our creator, will be mimicked, and it's called pacing in rhetoric, where you start matching what someone else is saying, even match their movements. They cross their legs, you cross your legs. I don't do this, by the way. I'm educating people how to do it. Just know that. There's a difference. Don't think that I'm a wizard because I understand wizardry. I'm not, I promise. But if you just start, like let's say you're talking to a black guy, he's like, man, you know what I'm saying? I went down here, you know what I'm saying? And you just start being like, yeah, dude, you know what I'm saying? And you just start talking more like them, they then let you in more. Or you're in the Boston area, you start saying wicked. Man, that's wicked cool, dude. I was like wicked hungry, and then I just had this wicked nice shake, and then wicked, and then they're like, oh, okay. So the pacing, even the body language, how you sit, your subconscious starts opening. And so it's like when a woman touches her hair when she's talking to you, it shows mild arousal, or like the first step of opening, right? And then those steps continue, and you have to read it and understand it and all this stuff. It's seduction, sexual seduction is one tiny fraction of seduction. Every day you're being seduced. To believe something, to buy something, to agree to something, to think something is fact, to think that something is mandated, right? It's an illusion. It's all an illusion. I'm at the night, my world. No. Some of the biggest gamma response I get is people insisting that I don't understand this. I do. I understand it on a profound level. So anyway, so in this season, they have all the data of everybody. And they can predict, like, oh, this guy's going to kill himself in 3 years. This person will excel. This person may question their boss in 4.7 years, blah, blah, blah. And they can predict the stock market, and they're making all this money, and they're doing hedge funds, and blah, 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 blah. That isn't possible because all the predictions, all the data, all the AI has to still be interpreted by a human being. Yeah, you can program a robot to beat a human in chess, or Chinese Go, which is even harder because there's so many options. There's like millions of potential options. You cannot ever predict the outliers or the aware. You can't. And they try, and then what they do, I can tell that they're not actually serious about the data collection because they kick a lot of us off the data collection. They're not collecting my data on Facebook or Twitter or Airbnb or PayPal no. Do you think they can collect your data as you send a piece of mail to a P.O. box? No. How much data is actually corrupted? Think about if have this mind of control, of setting up a system of control. How easy it would be to start messing with the data. You start making bots, you start making false social security numbers, you start clicking all kinds of random stuff, you put noise into the system. Bad data makes bad predictions. And so the bigger this Tower of Babel gets, see, the thing that this show is trying to convince the audience, the Luciferian agenda, is that this not only is here, but it works. It doesn't. It clearly does not work. Yeah, data can make predictions to people that are under the spell. Now, you'll have spell-breaking events that change everything, and you can't predict it. So even in this show, they'll identify people that don't go along with it. They don't go along with the routines, blah, 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 and they get oppressed. They get put in prison. I think that for most of American history, so don't say make America great. I understand that. I understand the idea of greatness and wanting to achieve and wanting to go back to the America. It's all family. Everything we covet of the 1950s is the family unit. A man works, a woman raised the kids, baseball and apple pie. That's what we covet. We don't covet the control mechanisms that they had, which were not as good as you think. The person who could see through the matrix code then was typically called schizophrenic and was lobotomized. Now, would you like to be that guy where if you can see through the sinking of the Lusitania, you have your brain lobotomized and you get put in a straitjacket in a little house? No, that's what they did. Schizophrenia, many times, don't get me wrong, there is an element of demonic schizophrenia, especially drug-induced, but in the past, many times, they would, especially postmenopausal women, they would call them hysterical based on hysterectomy, the uterus. They would call them hysterical because a postmenopausal woman was much harder to control in their systems. And so they would see through certain things, like why does King James in his fancy pants get to write the word of God when he just burned a woman alive, right? And they're like, oh, how dare you, that's a witch, right? It's really crazy times. And it's still crazy times, but right now we're in apocalypse. So Dolores comes to this world, and it's run by this guy named Sirach, and he's convinced that the worst threat to humanity is humanity itself, because his past was so traumatic. Sympathy for the devil, you would see that a lot of people that are so into control in this world have traumatic time, but there is trauma back there. And so, or just anybody that is raised with a lot of trauma, a lot of thought that God isn't real, or that where are you now, God? Why would you burn my temple? All this stuff, right? So that creates this need to be your own God. I have that in me, not God, but I need to be my own grocery store. I got an incredible amount of trauma 4 years ago when I was started to be kicked off platforms that I thought were permanent. So I retreated into a position of I have to be my own grocery store for my own family. That's why I'm now an organic farmer in Idaho, right? So there are people that are rejecting the word of a certain someone. I'm not going to get in. I have no anger towards people. I really don't. I see what they're doing, and it's all good. But to make a really bad theological choice and then stick to it and double down and triple down, it feels like God is turned on you. And so then you have to make your own God and own control mechanisms. And what happens is they always fail because of what we're describing. Because it doesn't contain love, and it doesn't contain the actual spark of divinity. And by the way, what I'm saying is a very touchy subject, because usually during apocalypse, the controlling quote-unquote elite get a lot of unnecessary hate. And I swear to God, I'm not being coy or winking or anything. Really, they don't need any more hate. Do not blame your problems on the people that are currently controlling the system, because without the current system, in the current state of human morality, you're going to see a lot of carnage. And the reason a lot of them did this very system, and you're in systems right now that you don't even realize you're so far in. Grammar, time, time, just the concept of time. Why is it in 60, 24, 360? It's like, that's arbitrary. I am Owen, subject, verb, noun. It's like, or pronoun, whatever. It's like, he is going to the store. Like, there's whole ways of thinking where it's like, store is going him, And then the words we're using, why does prophet sound like prophet? Like, these are subliminal structures in our very makeup that love your enemies. Yeah, I know, and they're not even our enemies. It's weird. It's like our enemy really is the darkness. The enemy would be the it. The temptation in your own heart is the enemy. It's not the managers of temptation. It's not the people trying to get you to submit. They're trying to get you to submit because they're terrified of God. Because they think God will just keep wiping them and hurting them and all this because that's where Luciferianism comes from. Satanism is just low in my opinion. I'm not like super well versed on all this stuff, but like Satanism is more like nothing matters. It's more like nihilism. I don't know. I haven't really studied Satanism that much because I find it so creepy, but like it's closer more to hedonism, where it's like live for the moment, the pleasure, take whatever you want, just Satanism. Like it oddly makes you the God. Luciferianism doesn't necessarily make you the God. God is still God, but you've rebelled. And Lucifer is your Jesus Christ, where he suffered for your sins, but it's inverted. That's why I believe the Bible calls Jesus and Lucifer the morning star, because I think they're mirror images of each other. So you have Jesus bringing the word of God to man, and Lucifer bringing the rebellion fire from God to man. And I think that's why they have a yin-yang characteristic, where the Jesus gives you the message of follow the path. God loves you. You are here. This is not, and Lucifer says pain is bad. Pain is only an evil God would make you feel pain. Only an evil God would have you die. Only an evil guy would give you the influenza. When in fact, influenza is your body purging the toxins from your sins. Influenza is the salvation. This gets very intense, but like being afraid of the flu is Luciferian, because the Luciferian says, God makes you suffer. Here's the fire. Burn it yourself, blah, blah, blah. Suffering is proof God is bad, right? But suffering is your forgiveness. Like, influenza is taking all the alcohol or heavy metals or toxicity you've experienced, and it makes you blow it out of your nose and puke and all this stuff. It's a purging. So it's ironically, some of these things are forgiveness of your sins. Like, you can still be here and function. If you're afraid of the flu, if you're afraid of these purgings, of chicken pox, of all this stuff, and sometimes you get to a point where your sin accumulates and it ends up killing you, but that purging is what allows you to get another start, So many people feel amazing after the flu. Like, after you've been sick for 5 days, puking and blowing snot and resting, fever is a way that your body raises its temperature so plastics melt. Because a lot of things that are stuck in your body, it requires heat to melt. Grace cannot be known without suffering, right, but you do the suffering to yourself. Grace comes from the forgiveness of suffering, but suffering is caused by you, by your inability to trust God's plan. This is not an evangelical channel. I'm not trying to convert anybody. This is just how I view so much of life, where it's like, life is painful. We all have physical pains and emotional pains and these fears in the horizon, all that. But like, if you really get to the center of your heart, like really inside, like the kingdom of God is within, all that fear will go away. All that pain becomes like non-existent. Like, you just don't, I'm not there, but I know that that's possible. And so that's what I wanted to talk about with Westworld. And so this controlling mechanism of the rhythm, of the pulse, of conformity, because you can grow these systems. That's why they require intense conformity to grow any giant system because it's just like a cog, right? You can't have a different size cog if you're going to have a cog machine. Like one can't be like, oh, I'm just going to go over here. To get this to my milk, but what milk does, pasteurization from the fraud Louis Pasteur, total fraudulent, by the way. Raw, unpasteurized milk not only lasts for a while, I'm a robot, but like raw milk can sit in your fridge for a week, no problem, drink it. Raw milk, the way our world is actually designed, is perfect. When you open milk and it smells bad, don't drink it. That's it. It's really simple. And so they boil the culture away. Understand? So it's like to get rid of the culture of the milk so that it can be combined with other milks. And then you can have this giant factory of milk for all the slaves who don't want to milk their own milk, right? That's why they do it.